And we're live. It is Friday. It is the 5th day of September, which means that 4 days of September have already gone by. It is 8 o'clock a.m., and I have here a bowl of cherry tomatoes. Um, and I'm going to be eating them through the morning because I'm hungry. I usually don't, I'm not a big breakfast person, but I'm hungry. I'm peckish this morning. And these tomatoes grow outside my house. The estimable Tamara Wittes has been on a tomato growing spree, and every day she harvests the tomatoes and I eat them one by one. Um, I'm not a either a gardener or, you know, a self-grown food, self-reliance kind of person. I'm perfectly happy, as I have done on this show, instead of going morelling in New Jersey, going morelling at the Whole Foods, and buying uh, dried morels and wetting them and dealing with it that way. But there is something lovely about uh, homegrown tomatoes. They taste a bit different from the ones that you get at the Whole Foods. They have a sharpness. And also, the supply of them is effectively infinite. I now eat basically tomatoes for breakfast. And that's kind of cool. And so I thought as long as the tomato crop keeps coming in at the rate that it is, I would bring them onto the show because we are waiting for Anna Bauer. And I want to tell you a little bit about today's show because Anna Bauer is coming on for the second day this week to talk about somebody named Taylor. But this one is not Taylor Swift. It is just a happy or maybe a miserable coincidence that there is another Taylor in the news that we are going to be talking about. And that is Taylor Lorenz, or maybe Taylor Lorenz. I'm not sure how she pronounces her last name. And Taylor Lorenz, for those of you who do not know her oeuvre, is a former Washington Post reporter who has gone independent, and she specializes in, um, uh, I don't know, in a Jesse Singal kind of way, generating controversy around herself, um, uh, and making making the story always be about her, which is something that I loathe in journalism. I think it is terrible. And Taylor Lorenz is somebody who uh, I stopped following on social media because though she often does interesting reporting, I find her presence um, and persona so needlessly self-centered and objectionable that I stopped following her and have. I usually don't unfollow people, but I actually unfollowed Taylor Lorenz because I find her presence annoying. And yet, this week, she has, or last week, I guess, broke some news that is genuinely important and has been the subject of um, really vicious Trump MAGA like attacks in um, uh, in response from, of all people, Democratic influencers. And so, despite myself, despite the fact that I don't really like Taylor Lorenz and I would rather not be talking to her um, about her, despite the fact that Mike Feinberg's reaction was, "Ooh, I hate Taylor Lorenz," despite the fact that uh, uh, nobody has really said a good word about her. Uh, uh, and
She's said many good words about herself.
Yes, except
I mean,
herself,
yeah.
right? She does praise herself a great deal. And despite the fact that we've already done a show this week about a tailor, we are doing another show about a tailor as soon as Anna Bauer shows up, which of course raises the issue that Anna Bauer is like Janine Balechian, always late. Um, there she is,
Look at
late,
this all.
fashionably 6 minutes late, summoned by discussing the fact that she's late. Anna Bauer, I have done a lengthy introduction to the Taylor Lawrence subject.
Oh,
Um,
fantastic.
and and all of which just requires that I finish by saying that the sun is shining, the birds are chirping. It's gonna be a great fucking day. Excuse me, Elliot.
Baby.
And you,
There's a baby.
yeah,
Sorry.
and you are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, as you know, is that babies are always welcome on the show, and they continue to be welcome until they realize that it is embarrassing to show up with their parents on television, and they rebel against it. And another one of the revolutionary features is that we don't have a limit to the number of tailors that we will discuss on the show in a week with Anna Bauer.
Which
And
Taylor is next, I wonder?
I don't know, but also the week is over after today, so we've capped out at two um, by dint of the fact that it's Friday.
Oh, a fun Taylor fact is that Taylor Lautner, the guy who played the werewolf in the Twilight series, is married to a woman who is also named Taylor. So
This
there's
is the
Taylor.
This is the problem with the modern habit of appropriating boys' names for girls. You
Well,
know,
do we know that that is really the case with Taylor, though? I feel like Taylor I feel like it's like always kind of been a girl's name, no?
no, no. Only in the last 30 years or so. As Mike is my witness, when we were children, um, you would Taylor was just a boy's name. And Jordan too. Like
Hmm. I
there were
didn't
no
know that Jordan.
female
Yeah,
Jordan in the
interesting.
70s.
Interesting.
And this whole like there's a good general rule that if you are naming girls after 19th century presidents, that is a modern affectation. Madison, Taylor, um, Harrison. Um, don't name your girls after 19th century presidents, or if you do, go with Buchanan.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Buchanan. What is the nickname for Buchanan though?
Buke,
Bucky? Oh,
Buke,
oh, that's oof,
Not canon.
oof.
Buke. It's like Tay Tay.
No, I don't like that.
Um,
Well, the connection to Taylor Swift with the Taylor Lautners, though, is that Taylor Swift used to date Taylor Lautner, and they're still friends. And they took a photo when he went to the Eras tour that was Taylor Swift, Taylor Lautner, and then the wife, who is now also Taylor Lautner because her name is Taylor. So three Taylors. Anyway.
well, I think that's great. And all right, let's start with um, who is Taylor Lorenz? And do we know whether she's Taylor Lorenz or Taylor Lorenz?
I have no idea. I gotta be honest, Ben, I have like never really thought about Taylor Lorenz that much until this week when this story has kind of just like been on my mind. So yeah.
So
I have
I
no
was
idea.
saying before you signed on, that I had thought about her enough to unfollow her on social media.
Oh,
Be-
what was the reason?
well, it was a couple of things. One, it was this endless propensity to make the story about herself and how people are reacting to her, which annoys me in this case because it's actually, in this case, it's legitimate, but it is like she'd be doing it anyway. Um, I find her insufferable. But then she also, I guess part of being part journalist, part influencer, part cultural figure is that you must have ill-considered opinions about absolutely everything. And so she has, um, she's just very kind of loudly opinionated about issues about which she knows nothing. And then when people disagree with her or criticize her for it, she is indignant in this, it's all about me. Why are people treating me this way? I get so
And
much hate mail kind of way.
indignant in the most public, obnoxious way that any human being could possibly conceive of.
Right. So,
Which
Okay.
we
Have
should
you
note.
go
We
ahead.
should note this. I think didn't this lead to her dismissal from the Post?
well,
Oh.
was she dismissed or was she just kind of, I mean, like right now being dismissed from the Washington Post is really more a
A
sign
badge
of
of
it.
honor.
Yeah, I mean it's honestly not uh but I don't know the circumstances under which she left, to be honest.
There's a really good Josh Barrow essay about her. I just don't remember when it's from or where it was published.
Oh, interesting. I have not read that. And I don't know the
If I can
circumstances
find it, I'll
of
put
her
it in the
departure
chat.
from the Washington Post. I will ask, Ben, have you also followed, for example, Nate Silver and Maddie, how do you say his name? Iglesias?
Iglesias.
And like literally every other man on the internet who do the exact same thing that you've described.
Okay. So first of all, Nate Silver does has a similar problem. Um, and and I dislike it intensely. Um, Nate Silver is also exceptionally substantive in the areas that he knows about, which is a save. I think it is less part of his persona um, than it is of Taylor Lawrence's persona. Ditto Matt Iglesias, whom I actually know personally. But look, to the extent that 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 I mean, I think the male pundit, or who I think of as similarly always making it all about me and people's reaction to me, that I think about when I think about Taylor Lawrence, is like somebody like Jesse Singal, who um, and I think there's something to criticize there too, in exactly the same way. Um, Look, I prefer people who just write what they write, and um, the substance is it leads with the substance and mutes. That's not to say you should never talk about the reaction to yourself, but I do think if that's the principal aspect of your social media, there's something wrong. Um,
I think okay, one thing that I will again, I have never read like truly the one article that I think I've ever read other than this piece of Taylor Lawrence, or actually no, I think there's maybe two. one is like one was about some other influencer thing, but like she has a book that she's written that, as far as I know, is all about influencers. Her like beat reporting was about influencers. Like, and I'm kind of like, there's a point to which maybe you might make the argument that like kind of a part of being a beat reporter about influencers is you kind of got to be an influencer and you kind of got to like
Why?
emulate the influencer. I don't know. I'm just making
You're
the
you're
argument. I don't know that
you're
I agree.
covering you're covering the motherfuckers in court. That doesn't you don't have to be a
No, you're
motherfucker in
right.
court
Yeah,
to
I don't
do
have to
that.
become Todd Blanche, right?
Right, exactly. I
Please
mean,
don't. Please don't.
I actually reject the premise. I think what you have to be in order to cover influencers is engaged with influencers, but you don't have to be infinitely self-centered um and imitating the genre. Anyway, all of this is a long-winded way of saying we are not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to have that annoying thing when somebody you really dislike and actually makes a really good point and the influencers come after her in exactly the way she fantasizes is always going on, and life imitates exactly Taylor Law. She makes a good point and then they come for her. So while I mute myself and cough, um, give us an overview of what we're done criticizing Taylor Lorenz. She deserves more, but she's right in this instance, and so we're going to allow um, the rest of this show to be Taylor Lorenz is right and she's being victimized, which is her meta narrative about everything. And every now and then a stopped clock is right twice a day. And we're
Although
going to give.
I am open to being wrong about this. I very much think I'm right, but I'm open to being
All
wrong
right. So
about.
just, I'm going to start coughing now and mute myself. And you are going to describe Taylor Lorenz's story in Wired magazine and the reaction to it.
Okay, so Taylor Lorenz publishes, and correct me if I'm wrong on anything, Ben, because it's been like a day or two since I last read this story. But Taylor Lorenz publishes this story in Wired, which I will say, like Taylor Lorenz, as I understand it, is mainly like on her own thing now, but wrote this story be freelancing for Wired. So it's published through Wired, which has been doing a ton of really great work, I think, over the past few months, particularly with a lot of the Doge stuff. And it's this story that is titled, are you putting it on the screen? A dark money group is secretly funding high profile Democratic influencers. An initiative aimed at boosting Democrats online offers influencers up to $8,000 a month to push the party line. All they have to do is keep it secret and agree to restrictions on their content. And it's about this political nonprofit, 501, what is it, 501(c)(4). I don't know nonprofit law, but it's about this group called Chorus that apparently is run by this influencer, Brian Tyler Cohen, who I guess is like big on YouTube. And it's like these contracts a lot. So at the highest level, these creators were getting paid like $8,000 per month to take part in this program that was kind of aimed at boosting progressive content creators.
And just to be clear, to be fair to the bad guys here, the Russians were paying right-wing influencers $100,000 per video. So $8,000 a month sounds like a lot, but you're still, being dwarfed by by right-wing uh, influence and information uh, uh, ecosystem interventions by, orders of magnitude.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of the argument that maybe we'll get to later in the backlash is like people being like, "Oh, well, look what the Republicans do." And I don't remember, Ben, is it the case that the Russian influence money was per video for specific content, or was it like we will give you talking points and you don't have to say this, but
No, no, these were
okay,
uh this was a more bespoke intervention, and it
okay,
was but like I just that was one example. The
okay,
the point is what Brian Tyler Cohen is doing here is he's trying at a relatively modest
yeah.
scale, which is I mean, how many influencers are involved in this, of course, has a lot to say about the scale, but but to replicate what is already going on at a very high level on the right,
Right,
including with
'cause
foreign money.
people on the right are making a ton of money in the influencer world. They've found ways to really monetize a lot of that content in various ways, including being a part of Russian comms operations. One reason I wanted to draw the distinction, though, is that my understanding about this chorus program that we're talking about, that's the subject of the article, is that there weren't like specific messaging that you had to put out there, but it was like a soft power type of operation, right? Where like there would be daily messaging meetings that they would have where they'd all get together like on a Zoom for like 10 minutes, and like chorus would kind of tell them like the messaging for the day kind of thing. A big part of the story, though, is that there were other types of restrictions around, when they were producing content. Like if the content creator wanted to set up an interview with an elected official that is in the scope of Chorus's what they call progressive policy agenda, um, then they had to, tell Chorus about it and collaborate with them, like if requested. So there were kind of like weird, like restrictions in the contract that some of the creators later said isn't really enforced to the letter. But nonetheless, there definitely like were these restrictions on kind of, when they were going about creating their content, they had to loop Chorus in on various things. But the big thing is the non-disclosure arrangements. There were, at least for some of the contracts, it sounds like Taylor Lorenz is reporting on a number of various contracts that might have different clauses in them, but it seems to be the case that there were these non-disclosure agreements in them, and that included not disclosing the funder of the program, which was the 1630 fund. Ben, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I actually
Oh,
can't.
you
I
can't. Okay.
know,
All right. I
I
was
mean,
just wondering if I was talking too much.
no, 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 no. I mean, I learned that the 1630 fund existed, and again, I run a small nonprofit media organization. I thought I was pretty aware of funding in this space. I had never heard of the 1630 fund, and um, and I was surprised to learn that it was throwing money around like this. So when when Taylor says a dark money group, this was dark even frankly to some of us who, you know, like spend a fair bit of our time trolling around looking for funding to support people like Anna Bauer. I mean, we're like this was not I am unaware of the scope of the activities of the 1630 Fund. I'd never heard of it before. This story was all new to me.
Can I
Yeah,
ask what's potentially a very naive question?
go ahead.
I mean, I know, as you guys know, I'm very, very new to the world of journalism and nonprofits and independent reporting, but I'm not new at all to the notion of people, whether malefactors or otherwise, attempting to leverage the internet for influence operations. I'm just used to it from nation states. What's the big deal here? And I'm not saying that to be glib. I'm genuinely asking, as somebody who's not enmeshed in this world, this is kind of just how I assumed everything has worked for the past half decade or so anyway. Where is the actual scandal here?
Go ahead. Ben, you can go first and then I'll
I,
go.
I would just like to say that our two FBI formers, Mike on the screen and Kate in the Greek chorus, are both, one is making and the other is foot stomping this point.
If I could just address Kate directly for a moment, I'm not going to get into it in this medium, but I think we know a lot of the same people in common. So if you ever want to connect off the show, hit me or Ben up personally. I'd love to chat because I think we worked in very similar spheres.
All right, so
Sorry.
let me say that uh, first of all, maybe the answer to this question should be nothing is weird or unusual about this. But if that's the answer, that reflects a change in the information ecosystem that we all need to be very savvy about. Um, I assume that when I see somebody like, say, Anna Bauer, whom I don't, let's assume Anna and I don't know each other, that when I see somebody expressing an opinion on matters of public affairs, that reflects their um, uh, non-purchased analytical standpoint on that issue. And in an environment in which that is not true, and by the way, when I say I assume, what I mean is I think I should be able to assume. Um, when that is not true, I think things should be labeled. So let's just talk about lawfare's policies for a moment, because they actually reflect, and I think a lot of publications have similar policies. Um, when we publish Anna Bauer, we are making a representation that she is not being paid by some other entity to have opinions on X subject, or that she will disclose them if she is. Um, Now, if that is, and when we have sponsored content, we label it very clearly as sponsored content. Now, are there gray areas, edges of that? Yes. For example, we often publish things from people who have been involved in an issue in one way or another. For But those are like these are very basic standards that I think people feel entitled to, and in before the world was fully, the ecosystem was as democratized as it was, and anybody could set themselves up as an expert on anything. Um, you had these intermediary institutions that had policies, and you could just decide, do you like the New York Times's policy, or do you like the New York Post's policy? Which do you trust more? And now you have an environment in which a whole bunch of people can say, I am commenting on blank, and nobody has any known standards. And so it's not that I have a problem with an influencer behaving the way, you know, like, I actually think whatever you do is fine. Just tell me who you are with respect to it. I am a person who is taking money from nobody, except paid subscribers of Dogshirt TV. Um, and um, and I'm trying to be as independent as I can about everything. Who are you? Not you, Mike Feinberg,
Yeah.
but you, set influencer. And I'm really fine with the answer to that question. You know, Benny Johnson wants to take money from the Russians, and just tell me.
Mhm.
I don't actually have a problem. Do you want to take money from the Russians and run Russian propaganda? Sure. Um, just tell me who you are. And I think um, the the oddity of this is that the influencers are treating, um, and I want to say this guardedly, they're treating everything like this product where, you know, uh, you're using X brand, and you're not, like, you're pretending it just showed up and you're not being paid by the brand to represent them. And look, I don't know that I have an ethical problem with what the influencers are doing here, but I really don't have a problem with Taylor Lorenz outing them. That's my that's my view. How do you think of it, Anna?
Right. Okay. Something that I want to add is more from the perspective of looking at it as a journalist who is not being secretly paid by a dark money political fund.
Well, you are. It's called lawfare.
Um, that's public, right? Like,
Yeah, you are known to be an
like,
employee of the law, which is
like
not a dark money
even
political
if
fund.
you're one of the people who wants to accuse lawfare of being the deep state, at least you know I'm being funded by the deep state,
Right,
right?
right.
um, but like this is the thing is that a lot of these influencers we're talking about them in the frame, right, of just being influencers, and you know, for the most part they are political influencers. That's what they really are, but a lot of them hold themselves out to be journalists and independent media. They are out there claiming that they are reporting news when in fact very often what they're doing is stealing actual journalists reporting and then aggregating it and not crediting them. And they're getting
Or just
subscribers.
parroting Brian Tyler Cohen's talking point.
Right, the the daily messaging. But so they're creating this content that they are putting themselves out to be independent journalists and getting subscribers based on these representations that they're making to people who maybe don't have the media literacy to really understand what the funding sources are and what the ethical obligations are of a journalist and all of that. They're not doing any of it in the framework of having any kind of journalistic ethics. Like, they are not disclosing that they're taking dark political money from this group for $8,000 a month and getting daily messaging suggestions and that kind of thing. And I think that that's just like really like bad conduct for people who put themselves out to be journalists.
All right, so we have two questions floating around in the chat that I want to get to. The first is, we've been delicate so far about not naming names. And the second is, Matt C's point that now that he understands the story, he doesn't really care. I want to, A, put some flesh on these bones, to use a metaphor from Mike's background, and B,
We'll explain that at some point too, but
and B, uh, uh, explain why the reaction to Taylor Lorenz, in addition to annoyingly validating her self conception, actually should make you care. So let's start by naming names. Who are we talking about?
Well, I think we already mentioned Brian Tyler Cohen, and I gotta say,
Although he's the funding source, not
he's
the
well,
not,
he's like the ringleader, right?
right.
Yeah.
So who are the
So,
influencers who were on the
so
tape?
the people who were on the program who are, as reported in the article, include Olivia Giuliani, the centrist Gen Z influencer who spoke at the 2024 Democratic National Convention, um, Laura Pietra, a former Playboy executive turned political influencer who hosts a podcast for Occupy Democrats. I'm going to skip. There's one girl who runs an American Girl doll themed pro DMC meme account. I don't know.
Wait, American Girl as in the high-end dolls?
The dolls, a doll themed DNC account. I don't know. Suzanne Lambert, who has called herself a Regina George liberal. Ariel Fodor, an education creator with 1.4 million followers on TikTok. Sander Jennings, a former TLC reality star. An older brother of trans influencer Jazz Jennings. David Pakman, who hosts an independent progressive show on YouTube covering news and politics. Leah McGowan, who goes by the online moniker Politics Girl, and dozens of others. I think that one of the other people who people might know, who I actually don't know if he's confirmed that he was part of the program or if he has just been posting about it and hasn't really said. But Aaron Parnas, who's like a big Substacker guy, the son of Lev Parnas, has also been someone who has been mentioned. But
all right, so I have a serious question about this list. When I read this list, Anna, my reaction was I've never heard of any of those people except David Pakman. But that when I have never heard of people in that can simply reflect the fact that I am, the guy who thought that Beyonce's name was pronounced Bay once, and am deeply, deeply out of touch with pop culture. I am curious, how many of these people were you even aware of before this story?
Look, I am not the target audience for these, like the kind of content that these creators make. Like I am I'm just reading the news kind of gal. And
But you're pretty wired into online influencer culture. I mean,
you're right. You're right. But for some reason, I had never heard of like the vast majority of these people. I heard of Pac-Man. I knew who Olivia Giuliani was. I knew who Suzanne Lambert was. And I knew who David Pac-Man was. But to be honest, one of the only reasons I knew who those people were is because there was an influencer conference in DC recently, and my friend was at the conference, and I went and met her, not to go to the conference, but just to meet her and hang out with her. And so I was like hanging out in the lobby, and there were like all these influencers who were around, and they were all talking about monetization and like all this stuff. And it was so fascinating and funny to me. And I was like, who are these people? So I looked up some of them. And that's how I found out who some of these people were.
Gotcha. All right. So does that say to you that these people that this is a nothing burger, or that we are deeply out of touch with how messaging is happening these days, and that Brian Tyler Cohen is investing in people that are actually in a position to reach large numbers of people, and you and I are just not wired into that culture enough to appreciate it, but he's actually right and we're wrong?
I'm not really sure. I feel like I need to get a better sense of it. Like, I do think these are people who really do reach a lot of people, like on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. I think those are the main, like, it's all video. It's a lot of like video content producers, and I just am not in that medium other than doing Dog Shirt Daily. So,
Well, I don't know. You come on Lawfare Live every week. Let's brass tacks here, because you're the head of an actual online cult, and and I am a little bit offended on your behalf that you were not contacted for this. You're the right age demographic, and you run a cult. And
yeah.
for those who don't know, the Witoed cult, the
Why didn't did Toad get Toad?
Exactly.
Why
What?
did
What?
we get any dark political money? This is so upsetting.
Right.
Think of all the things we could have done to uncover who is the administrator of Doge.
Right. But I
Had
just
we
want to
had all.
verify you had no contact with Brian Tyler Cohen or his minions about this. They
No,
didn't.
it's
They didn't approach
upsetting.
you. They didn't offer you $8,000 a month.
No, and I could have, Toad could have been in the daily messaging every day, Ben, and think about how many people we would have reached by
Right.
then.
So, okay. I want to now shift to the question of does or why does this
Wait,
matter?
can I say though, really quickly, something I do think is that, like, and maybe I'm just so naive, but I do genuinely think that people like authenticity online. Like, and it's, at the same time, you see so many people who are successful who are very not authentic. And so I think that there's a point to which, like, all of this becomes like, yeah, you're amplifying and you're reaching a lot of people, but are you really making people like get on board with your policy positions that you're amplifying? I don't know. Um,
All
ugh.
right.
Anyway,
So let's talk about the reaction because it seems to me that the but for the reaction to this, I might agree with the members of the Greek chorus who were saying, "Come on, this is a dog bites man story. Influencers, political influencers on the take from dark money is exactly what we would expect." That so far I am not shocked, but I am semi shocked by the reaction to this. So walk us through a little bit how people reacted to this story.
yeah, okay, so I think the real story is actually in the reaction. Like, I read this story and I was like, all right, this is something I maybe will ask my friends about at dinner and be like, what do you guys think about this? And see if I'm wrong about my initial, instinct about it. And then I'll probably will never talk about it again. Because I don't really have, like, I don't know, like, whatever, in the grand scheme of things, it's not, it's not extrajudicial killings of suspected Venezuelan drug traffickers. So,
Of course,
so,
most things aren't, but that can't be the standard of news. But fair enough.
but like it seemed like a solidly reported story, and it was interesting and whatever. So then the article comes out. And the reaction to it from the people who are the subjects of the reporting is what has just really been both fascinating and horrifying and concerning to me. Um, because when this story came out, the first thing that I think is important to note is that, like, Taylor Lorenz in the article and then also online has made it very clear that they reached out to all the people in this story for comment like well before it published. And that is like standard reporting practice. You reach out to people, you give them a list of the the facts that you intend to report so that they can provide a response that you can then incorporate into your story so that their perspective is accounted for, so that if you need to do additional fact checking, that you can do that, all of that kind of thing. So after this story publishes, it's only then that she hears from an attorney for the creators. No one at first provided comment. After the story publishes, she hears from an attorney for Chorus who provides like a number of things that don't require a correction to the story or retraction, but it does like give Wired a reason to incorporate additional comments in the story, right?
And
So
that's pretty
then,
standard. People
super
often
sca-
don't comment before a story, but react to it, and then you amend the story to incorporate the comments.
Right, super standard. And then at the bottom of the story, they do a note from the editor saying, after the publication of this story, we received comment from so and so. We've incorporated that. Again, that is not a correction or a retraction, it is just additional context. Well, that then becomes fuel for people, include these creators. Part of the kind of first attack that they launch against this story is, oh, this is so embarrassing, there's already retractions that are being issued for this story. And that is like a tactic that's actually a known tactic, right? Is to wait until the story comes out. So then there are things that are added or updates that do happen. So then you can say, oh, look, like they had to make corrections to the story. Then Ryan Tyler Cohen, God, that's such a hard name to say because it's not just two first names, it's three. Well, I guess Cohen isn't necessarily a first name, but
Cohen
it's
is never a first name.
so I feel like I've heard people named Cohen as a
Cohen is one of
maybe
the most, it's one of the most specific names in the Jewish lexicon. It means something really precise.
no, I know. We've talked about what Cohen means before and Wittes, but um anyway, so for some reason his name is just hard for me to say. Brian Tyler.
Brian Tyler Cohen, Brian Tyler Cohen,
Brian
Brian
Tyler
Tyler
Cohen. Brian
Cohen,
Tyler
Brian
Cohen.
Tyler Cohen, Brian Tyler Cohen.
Anyway, he comes out with this like YouTube video where he's like, this is just a scholarship fund. He makes all of these like statements in which like he is kind of spinning it as like this is no different from, you know, just giving people a scholarship, small creators, which first of all, I mean, it sounds like maybe there are some small creators in the program, but like also there's literally huge, massive creators in the program. But he's like, you know, this is to like help creators like build their brands and blah blah blah. And then the main thing that really concerned me though in this video is that he suggests that Taylor Lorenz has done the same thing because she is a part of a public journalism fellowship program called the Midyar Fellowship, and which is a nonprofit journalism fellowship program that has its own funding source and stream. And the people who apparently fund that program are also major funders in the 1630 fund. So he uses like a very clever turn of phrase to suggest that Taylor Lorenz is also receiving dark money and that she's basically doing the same thing and that what they're doing is no different, which frankly is ridiculous. Because Taylor Lorenz, like, it's a public, like, she was always transparent about the fact that she was a part of this fellowship program.
And also, as somebody who's dealt with the Omidyar Foundation a fair bit, actually, and there are several Omidyar foundations. One is the Omidyar Group, which I think is the one that funds this, but another one is the Democracy Fund, which is a major supporter of lawfare. These are exactly the sort of funders when I said earlier that, I was surprised that I'd never heard of the 1630 fund because I'm the kind of person who goes around looking for funding for a media organization that I run. The Omidyar groups are one of the places that you often talk to about funding nonprofit media. They're the big supporters of it. And by the way, they don't tell you what to say. They're not circulating, like I've had a long, productive relationship with the Democracy Fund, and they never tell you what to say. They don't say what the message of the day is, right? And one's relationship with them is never secret. And so it's really is in defense of Taylor Lawrence's position here, taking money overtly from the Omidyar Foundation or the one of the Omidyar foundations is a completely different thing from taking money covertly from a dark money group.
Right. And so then the other thing, so that like spins out into its own conspiracy theory about, oh, Taylor Lawrence is doing the exact same thing. She is taking dark money and not disclose, or I guess they don't have the whole non-disclosure argument because she's very clearly disclosed. But then the other thing is like, there some of them are like using very similar messaging responses. In response to this. So like I'm trying to look. Hold on. I'm trying to find it. They will have these like tweets that they'll post that are like recently because of a now debunked Taylor Swift excuse me Taylor Lawrence story. I lost subscribers as a result. And then they kind of launch into like, help me by like subscribing to my platform because like I've lost all these
Help me recover from the malicious Taylor Lawrence attack.
And they're saying like that her article has been debunked. It's a clear like MAGA tactic of just saying something is fake news when it very clearly is not. There still to this day has not been a retraction or correction to the story. They have not produced any type of compelling evidence that what she was writing is factually incorrect. And then like there's all these additional arguments, that they're making that are like, oh yeah, like, well, the right is doing this, so we need to keep up with them. That's why it's fine. One of the guys who's been the most kind of outspoken is this David Pakman guy, and he has, most recently talked about suing people in relation to the Taylor Lawrence story. He like and has kind of portrayed it as like, oh yeah, I've talked to top attorneys and they did say it's going to be just like so many thousands of dollars and so long to like do anything. And I am again like sitting there like I feel like I know what's going on here. um
Yeah, she wrote something, and again, I say this: I hate Taylor Lawrence. I don't. Nah, that's strong. I don't. I have contempt for Taylor Lawrence. She told the truth here, and she wrote something that was true. And by the way, if it is defamatory of you, which is, and defamatory does not mean false, it means of a character to hurt your reputation. That's because you were doing something that was a bit shady. And
But it's like, wait, why are you guys acting like this if you think it was all fine? Like it all like it's all very just so strange. Oh, and then the most recent thing that Pac-Man has done that I was just losing my mind about is that he's like, I no longer think, and it's very clearly this is in response to the story, but he's like, I no longer think we're all a big tent of progressives. We've got the people who really want to win elections, and then we've got the people who are concerned about purity tests. And
yeah, I just want to, here's what I want to say to all the influencers who are out there moaning about what Taylor Lorenz did. Um, be more like Benny Johnson and Tim Pool. When they got outed as taking money from the Russians, they were like, "Yep, taking money from the Russians. They're on my side." Just acknowledge it. You're taking money from a dark money pack to coordinate messaging. Just stand up, David Pakman, and say, "Yep, dark money is helping control what I say. I happen to agree with these talking points. Chill out, people." Um, and then the problem goes away, and we leave it to the Mike Feinbergs of the world, if there are any left, to decide whether there's any uh, uh, influence, FARA problems? And the answer will inevitably be no, because we don't enforce FARA.
Yeah, there's every part of the FBI that was looking at that no longer exists.
Right. So we don't have a program for that anymore. So there's no exposure here. There's no problem except if you're embarrassed by what you're doing. So just man up, woman up, and take it on.
Right. Okay. Can I add one more thing that I just find to be just like, I'm like, wait, what? What is this logic? There was another creator, I forget her name, but she did a video where she was trying to explain away some of the contract provisions by being like, oh, well, they don't enforce this, or like whatever. And so she showed part of the contract, but it actually all just like confirmed a lot of details of Taylor Lawrence's story. But in doing so, one of the reasons that she gave for the non-disclosure was, oh, this was just like a concern about small creators who live in like, vulnerable like red communities, or like they're vulnerable because they live in red communities because like they might be get more attention from being in the program, and like no one wants to like out them without their consent, and so that's why there's this non-disclosure agreement, which is to protect the small creators. And I'm like, wait a second, I thought the point of the program was to amplify the brands and to grow creators. And it just doesn't, like, some of the logic they're coming up with like doesn't really make sense to me, because it's like,
very MAGA.
it's very MAGA. It's all incredibly MAGA. And so that's why I'm interested in it, because it's an example of the left, or people who call themselves the left, taking these MAGA strategies and really putting it to work.
All right. We have 4 minutes left. I want to conclude. I would be remiss if I didn't conclude with Lawfare's own policies on this subject, as well as my personal policies, since some people have sometimes called me an influencer. Um, uh, Number one, let me start with my personal policies. Um, I sell subscriptions to Dogshirt Daily / Dogshirt TV. I do not otherwise take money from uh, anybody, save my employer, and which is the Brookings Institution. And sometimes I write a book or something and sell a book or sell an article. Although I almost never write for anything but Lawfare anymore, so I sometimes get paid by the Atlantic or something. Or sometimes people give me a speaking fee. Other than that, I really don't take money from anybody save the subscribers of Dogshirt Daily. As to Lawfare, Lawfare takes money from absolutely anybody, through our Give Butter accounts and our Patreon, and in small dollar figures. And obviously, if you're a drug trafficker, or if you're trying to launder money, I don't know how you would launder money through Lawfare, but please don't. Otherwise, please do donate to Lawfare, 501c3 nonprofit. And if you are a big foundation, that is the other way we do revenue, which is we get grants from foundations. And those foundations, we don't do it in secret. We publish our 990 every year, and you can see who our major donors are. And it's pretty open and pretty transparent. And uh, uh, so yeah, that's the way it works. And by the way, when we fund people, we fund them either as contractors and or as employees, and of contractors like Mike Feinberg or employees like Anna Bauer, and we never do it in secret. And so most people, when you see them, like it'll say on when Mike Feinberg writes for Lawfare, he is a public service fellow at Lawfare. And when you see Anna Bauer's stuff, she's a senior editor at Lawfare, and so it's pretty transparent. It's pretty clear. We don't. The money couldn't be less dark. In fact, please send us contributions because that's how we pay for things. Yeah, that's the story. And as much as it breaks my heart to say it, uh, you go, girl, Taylor Lorenz. She's, you know, I'm on your side on this one, reluctantly.
I gotta
Um,
say, the more that you hate on Taylor Lorenz, the more I am becoming a Taylor Lorenz fan.
Yeah, that's because you haven't spent a lot of time watching her social media. She's so aggravating. Um, Folks, we're going to be back on Monday. Um, it's going to be fabulous. Um, and I have no idea who the hosts are going to be. I have no idea who the guests are going to be. I have no idea what any of it is going to be, except that, there's going to be like 30 of you, and there's going to be at least one of me, and it's going to be a blast. And now I am going to go edit a piece by Anna Bauer that is not paid for by anybody but Lawfare's donors.